shamanism is a way of life. And so what shamanism aims at is bringing unity and balance back to a person through individual healing, through healing of the community, and also through healing of the collective.
Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I'm your host, my name is Karolina, and I am the Connection Catalyst. I help spiritual entrepreneurs experience deeper connection with themselves, with others, and with the universe. Today on the show, we have Rachel, the Intuitive Counselor and the Energy Healer. Welcome to the show, Rachel. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's so cool to be here.
I am so excited to talk to you, especially that we're going to talk about shamanism and chakras and all my favorite topics. So, this is really, really great. But before we start diving deep into that, I would love you to share a little bit of your story. How did you become the intuitive counselor? What has inspired you to become a healer? How did it start? When did it start? Even was it in childhood? Was it something in your life that happened to put you on this path? I would love if you can share with us.
Sure. Oh, yes. So my story begins when I was a small child. I've always been a sensitive child, or I was always a sensitive child. I've always been a sensitive person. And growing up as an extra sensor or an extra sensitive child, I didn't really know how to navigate the world. I wasn't really supported, I think. And so I had a really difficult childhood. I grew up in a home that was pretty traumatic. And I can say all this now because we've all done a lot of work to heal. But that was really my foundation. It was really unstable. I was really, I felt kind of like a fish out of water, we should say, because I was so different than a lot of my peers. And again, with this really heightened sensitivity, it was very challenging for me to kind of just be in the world with other people because they weren't always meeting me in the same level. And so I always was kind of a little bit of an outcast. I was always kind of that lone kid, alone in the corner reading. And so I really found a lot of peace in solitude as a child, and really focused a lot on some of these kind of metaphysical topics. And so ever since I was small, I was always interested in things like intuition, spirit. I was fascinated with the paranormal and the metaphysical. And so my whole life, I've really had an interest in that. But growing up, my life continued to be a little bit challenging just because of who I was as a child. And it was challenging for me to really navigate the world once again. And so I did experience a lot of trauma. And so, kind of long story short, with the traumatic piece, it was in my journey towards healing that I really discovered, or I really opened up more to this intuition when I really began turning inward more deeply, that I was able to harness my intuition. So it was when I was about 17 years old, and I began my healing journey from this really kind of traumatic life that I had, feeling really kind of like an outcast. And I discovered a Reiki practitioner. So 17 or 18 years old, I first was introduced to Reiki, which is an energy healing technique, hands-on energy healing, although we can do it at a distance, which is the beautiful thing about energy. But that was really kind of my introduction to this energy world. And again, it was with my own intention for healing that I began to open up more to this metaphysical realm, so to speak. And so from Reiki, then it was like I could not get enough, right? That's when my first experience with the chakras kind of came into my life. And I really just was so devoted to healing myself and learning more about myself that I started taking classes to then do Reiki as well. So I pursued my 3 levels of Reiki training. So Reiki 1, Reiki 2, Reiki Master. And again, this was all in it with intention to heal myself as well. But then kind of inadvertently also, I wanted to take these tools and help other people maybe who had felt like outcasts as children, who had had traumatic lives, because I saw the benefit of this energy work in my own life, that I knew I couldn't just keep this information for myself, right? I had to go out and share it. And so I pursued a lot of that energy work. I did also do traditional therapy for several years, although I found that it wasn't as comprehensive. It's like no matter what, I felt like I couldn't fully achieve a sense of wholeness with just that traditional work. And so that's really why I became so passionate about that energy work, because it was like that missing piece, right? And so after I completed all of my training with Reiki, I was like, I need more. I'm just like hungry for knowledge and for information about this like metaphysical world and spirituality and all of that. And so that's where I was introduced to shamanic work, shamanic healing. And so I suppose during my journey here with shamanic work, like if you would have told me when I was a kid that I would be doing this work now, that I would be doing that I would be an intuitive counselor and I'd be reading people's energy, I would have laughed, because to me it was like this really cool, exciting concept, but I didn't think it was something that I could necessarily do. But it was with healing and peeling back all of these layers of trauma and conditioning and programming that I was able to open up my intuitive senses. And again, it was really through that shamanic work, which is really about identifying spirit in everything. And so I started a course called the Medicine Wheel with my teacher, who had also taught me Reiki. And it was a year-long course that I took when I was like 21, 22 years old. I'll be 32 this year, so it's been a long journey for me. But I started on this journey of the Medicine Wheel, which is an indigenous concept for personal transformation. And that's where we're really reconnecting with Mother Earth and really acknowledging spirit within all of us. So yeah, it was a really kind of long journey of healing trauma, which brought me here to this point. And then as soon as I was able to heal and peel back all of these layers of conditioning, I realized, oh my gosh, we're all intuitive beings, we're all spiritual beings. And so it's not just me with these special abilities, which some people might call them. We all can do it, right? Because we're all spirit and we're all energy. And so I took all of these years of healing, all of these years with Reiki and shamanic work. And in the meantime, I was also going to school where I studied human development. I studied psychology. I also then went to graduate school and got a master's degree in professional community mental health counseling. So I'm trained as a therapist. So I take my work in the traditional mental health field and I take my work in the energetic healing realm and I combine it all together to offer this really unique way of helping people tap back into their true essence as spirit, with the understanding of how to heal the mind as well through psychology. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but there's so many layers to it, but it's been so worth it every single second. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. And there is always more to heal and there's always more to explore and learn as well. But it sounds like, yeah, over 10 years experience in these fields there, this is really amazing. And so I'm really curious to know from your perspective, because you're trained in like a, let's say, regular, let's say, mental health practices versus energy based mental health practices, because it's also mental health or emotional health as well. Like, what is missing in the traditional way from your perspective only? What is missing there? Like, if you could write a curriculum, right, and involve some things there, and like just insert some of the wisdom that you know from the spiritual world, like what would you put?
Mm, that's a great question. And truly, what I found was the missing component was focusing on the energy bodies and spirit, because we go to traditional practices with the kind of primary focus on correcting our thinking, which is so important. But we also have so much more going on in our energy bodies, which is not really something that's addressed at all in traditional work. We only focus on the physical. And so that's where this shamanic work comes in, where we're accessing the energy bodies. And we use the chakras kind of as portals or windows into those energy bodies. And I've never gone to a traditional practitioner who talks about that kind of stuff. And so I would definitely say, if we're not addressing how trauma and even just the human experience impacts our energy bodies, then the healing is incomplete because we're just working with, potentially the mind or the nervous system, which are all very, very important things as well. But we have to look at the whole human, which includes the energy bodies. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we have to be intentional with that because we can include higher self as well. And that's what I also found while talking to people, who have done a traditional therapies or whatever. It's like you don't go to the core wound, the core issue that is unexpressed emotion. And so if you don't express what is suppressed in your body, it's like sure you can heal something, you can shift perspectives, and then in result can also shift your emotional state. But the emotion is the energy in motion. The emotion is something that we need to focus on if we want to experience really big shifts in our life. And so these emotions are suppressed, and they also chill on our chakras. If there's an emotion, let's say, of lack of success or lack of ease, it's going to be on our throat. Or if things are unexpressed, it's also on our throat chakra. Or if there is any grief or sadness because of a loss of a loved one, then it's going to be on your heart, and it's going to affect your lungs or your heart. Or like we need to address all of that and look at it holistically. So I'm really glad that you're combining both approaches, because that's really great to have the just holistic view on everything, not only one lens or the other lens. So this is really great. And I would love to ask about the shamanic healing. So what is shamanic healing specifically in your view, and how does the person experience the shamanic healing? Because I know that there are a lot of shamanic practices, and they go into the underworld and the upper world, and you have like spirit
Hmm.
animal and the plant kingdom and all these things. So I would love you to just tell us a little more and dive a little deeper in it, because I've had some shamanic healing practitioners on the podcast, but not really diving deep into what it actually is. So I would love you to share.
Sure. Shamanism is a way of life. And so, what shamanism aims at is bringing unity and balance back to a person through individual healing, through healing of the community, and also through healing of the collective. Because from a shamanic lens, we acknowledge that everything that we can perceive is a creation of the creator, of God, of source, whichever name you choose. And so shamanism is recognizing the divinity within every single person. And so there are several different schools of thought, or there are several different approaches to shamanic work. But it is one of the oldest identifiable methods for healing and for maintaining wellness. I think it's like 40,000 years old or something like that. And it originates in Siberia. So the way I always think about shamanic work, a shaman is kind of the very first psychiatrist, the very first doctor, physician. And so um, if you go to a shamanic practitioner, they are doing exactly what you just said. They're getting to the root cause of an illness. Because if we look at our physical reality, everything that we perceive in our physical reality is a manifestation of energy or of spirit. And so, from a shamanic lens, there are so many things going on behind what we can perceive with our physical senses. So, the shamanic practitioner will go into those energetic layers to heal wounds, to rearrange things energetically so that we can then achieve that balance here in our physical reality, right? And so I heard you say the lower world, the upper world, the middle world. And so what these are, from a shamanic perspective, we have different states of consciousness that help us to access different types of information that we need for healing. And so if somebody were to come to me for a shamanic healing, the way it works, I do have them lay down on my table, but we do a little bit of talking beforehand. And so this is kind of where that counseling piece comes in, because what the shamanic practitioner wants to do is identify what is it that's causing this imbalance, that's creating illness within you, right? Because illness is really imbalance of something, right? On the mental or the emotional or even the physical level. And so the shamanic practitioner is going to have a conversation with the person to identify where that original wound is, right? What was that thing that happened? And so where shamanic work differs a little bit from traditional healing modalities is that there are so many different things that can create imbalance. So when we're speaking about things from an energetic perspective, we can look at past life things. We can look at things like energetic cords with people, something called power loss, something called soul loss. And so there are a lot of different things that can contribute to imbalance in a person that are not even addressed in like mainstream medicine or mainstream psychiatry or therapy, right? And so the shamanic practitioner then will identify that core wound or that original wounding, which can be something from a past life. It can originate on a lot of different levels that way. But then the client will lay down on the table and the shamanic practitioner goes into an altered state of consciousness. And so this is another thing that makes it really different than traditional medicine or therapy, because we're going into non-ordinary reality to access information, but also to make change in the client's life. So rather than just working with the physical body, we're literally going into the different layers. And so that's when those things like the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world come into play. They're just energetic layers to a person, because we're like kind of like have you ever heard of those nesting dolls? I think that's the term. So you've got a smaller doll, a bigger doll, and they all fit. And that's kind
Yeah,
of
like
what
a
we are as
matryoshka,
people.
like
Yeah,
Russian
yeah. So
Russian kind of.
yes. And so I always look at a person like that. So the shamanic practitioner is going to go into those different layers to create change, which then creates change on the physical. So shamanism is a way of life that helps us to maintain balance by a lot of different techniques. But there's a little misconception that it's a religion, and it's not necessarily a religion. It's just recognizing that we're all from a larger source. And so to have reciprocity and respect for everything, because truly we're all kind of an aspect of one another. So yeah, there's a lot to
Perfect.
it. Yeah, there's a lot.
I have a lot of questions based on what you just shared. First of all,
Yeah.
I'm curious to know about this power loss and soul loss. Like, what is that?
Yes. So power loss. Let's start with power loss. Every single person has an energetic signature. We can call it our soul. And so that is your source of power, your source of energy, your life force. And so there are a lot of different ways that we give our power or we give our life force away, which results in loss of power. And so very subtle ways that we give our power away is when we say yes when we want to say no, or we do things that are out of alignment with our true selves. And so sometimes it can be really overt experiences of giving ourselves away to somebody, and sometimes it can be really, really small, but over time, the more power we give away, the less power we have for ourselves, and we're depleted, and that's going to cause imbalance. And so we'll start to see different health and illness manifest in the mind and in the body, and even on an emotional level, things like that. But people, not only people can take our power, we can give our power away to a lot of other things: addiction, technology. It's where are you placing your attention? Where are you, right? Because if we think about paying attention, we're paying with our energy. And so the more that we're constantly giving it to things outside of ourselves, the less we have to kind of fill our own cups back up, if that makes sense. And so that's going to deplete us. So that's power loss. And there are other examples, but that's just kind of like the basic gist of it. And so then soul loss is the kind of the same thing. So there's something, maybe you've heard of the term soul retrieval. Have you ever heard of that before?
Yes.
Okay, so this is where shamanic work is really unique to other healing modalities, because trauma can create fragmentation within our psyches, And really, what's happening is that an element of our consciousness is becoming disconnected from our present awareness, our conscious awareness. And so, this term in psychology is called dissociation. And so, it can be from major traumatic events, once again, like physical abuse, violence, anything like that, accidents, or it can be really subtle over time again. So continuous experiences of power loss can lead to soul loss, which is where an aspect of you is kind of dissociated from your true soul essence. It's like hiding in a way, right? And so that's going to create a lot of issues as well. But the theme through both of those, power loss and soul loss, are that your true energetic signature is disconnected. You're disconnected from yourself. And so, really, what shamanic work does is helps us to retrieve all of those pieces that we've given away or that people have taken from us. And it helps us reintegrate them so that we can achieve wholeness once again.
Beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the soul loss sounds a little bit like the work that I do that is called the completion process, the method developed by Teal Swan. And it's about feeling an
Mm,
emotion and going back to your childhood trauma that caused this, emotion to be there. And then you retrieve this aspect back to yourself. Like the final, let's say, last step of the process, it's like the child can choose to merge with us again. So this is kind of like a soul retrieval process as well. So I kind of use this term sometimes as well to explain how it all works. But I'm curious to know, what are the examples of the power loss that, because you gave one example, like saying yes to something that you actually want to say no to. But what are other examples so that people can actually relate to that?
yeah. So one thing that I think is really common these days, and it's even something common in my life, is our kind of like attachment to technology or our attachment to social media and things like that. And it's kind of a hard concept for people to wrap their minds around because it's kind of strange for people to think. But what we want to think of our power as is our attention. So whatever you're constantly giving your attention to, right? So how many of us are glued into our phones all the time? We are giving our life force away to these external things. So um, let's see, I think another example of power loss would be really, I mean, anything that depletes your energy over an extended period of time, anything at all. So, unhealthy habits, unhealthy eating habits, it can be unhealthy thought patterns, it can be staying in situations that are creating negative or kind of damaging emotional states. So it's always about recognizing in this situation, am I making a decision that is in alignment with my higher self where I'm able to stay true to myself, or am I staying in a situation that really is actually kind of harmful and that's not serving my highest good? And the more that you stay in those situations and the more that you kind of contribute to some of these like inequitable exchanges of energy, whether that's with people, substances, technology, lifestyle, job, anything like that, the more we're giving our power away. Does that make sense? A little bit?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely, it does. And I had an example recently of this myself when I was just deciding about myself. I was dating a person. I was like, okay, I'm unhooking myself from this person and just getting my energy back. And I still might date or might not date or might, do whatever, but I want to decide for myself to have my energy here with me rather than with this person, because even then we can give our power away. And I really felt so powerful. And I decided, okay, I'm just getting it all back. And whatever happens, whether we date still or not, I'm in power. And it felt so great. And I just realized, I caught myself, okay, I'm having this person in my energy field somehow. They are in my mind or whatever, but I want to now be sovereign. I want to have my power and I don't want to have them as much in my energy field. And yeah, so it felt so empowering when I have decided, okay, I'm getting it back. And I literally felt more powerful in my body. So I can totally relate to that. And it doesn't have to be even something unhealthy. It can be just that you are unconsciously, want to meet your needs in some way. So then you do this unhealthy habit, or you are attached to this person or this thing or whatever it is. And then you just try to meet your needs in this way. But actually, you can center yourself within, and then you don't need these external things to make you feel better. Of course, it's nice when things make you feel better, and I totally can relate to the technology as well, because recently I've been on a retreat called Ista level 1, if someone have heard of it. But anyway, I just put off my phone and my computer for a week, completely just off. And then when I took my phone in my hands, I'm like, oh my god, this is not even real. Like, why am I even looking at the screen? It's just like so unreal now that I've spent just a week in nature and just dancing with people, just hugging and loving and playing and eating and just, sitting at the waterfalls and just really being present here and now. I was just like, oh wow, like I actually feel like I want to have more real life interactions, real life things going on in my life, not only online, because my whole business is online, all the projects that I have. And I have decided, okay, I need to do something in person from now on, because it's just a different perspective. And so I know how technology can hook us sometimes, and we give it a lot of energy, and that's beautiful as well. Technology is beautiful, but we need to know where is the line that we're crossing sometimes, right? So yeah, I think it's important to mention. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's really, really cool. All right, so next question, because I have a lot of them about shamanism. What are the differences between the underworld and the upper world? Like, what are these worlds, these layers of us?
Sure. So we can think of so I call it the lower world. The lower world, the middle world, and the upper world are states of consciousness. And so we can think of the lower world as kind of like our subconscious mind, and the middle world kind of like whatever's going on for us right now presently, but maybe not at that. It's kind of like behind the physical, whatever's going on energetically. It's like an overlay, okay, right now. And then we have the upper world, which is just our pure higher selves, our awareness of everything above our human conditioning and our programming. And so there's information in all of these different levels. And so shamanic work works in all of the layers. So each is beneficial for retrieving a different type of information. But the lower world is also responsible for like the connection to the physical earth, the spirits of the land, our animal power guides. I heard you say that. Plants, right? Plant medicine, consciousness. That's the lower world. And then the middle world can be kind of like amorphous, which is strange. There's a lot that goes on for us energetically here in the physical realm that we just can't see. But the upper world is like our spirit guides, even like angels, those higher sentient beings that aren't in this physical plane, this physical time space reality, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're each are kind of open to different interpretations, but that's what I've learned. And so, when we speak about this soul loss or soul retrieval, the shamanic practitioner will often go into the lower world to retrieve some of these pieces that have been fragmented, or we'll go to the lower world to communicate with our animal guides, to communicate with spirits of the land, the plants, things like that. And then when we want to communicate with our higher selves, or we want to communicate with the spirit guide, then we go to the upper world. And so the middle world, this is kind of one that's difficult to explain because it really is so similar to what we have going on now. So one way that we can kind of think about it, it might be like the concept of ghosts, or the concept of energy that doesn't have a place. It doesn't really belong in the upper world. It doesn't really belong in the lower world. It's kind of this energy that is just like disembodied, or not in like a negative way. It's just kind of looking for a home, we'll say, in a way. So with shamanic work, we often work in the lower world and in the upper world, because those have very clear landscapes, very clear purposes. A lot of stuff can go on in the middle world that we don't really know. So something that we always say is there's a gatekeeper in the lower world and there's a gatekeeper in the upper world. So that's kind of like the bouncer of a club that's going to say like, yes, you can come in, or no, you can't. So the middle world, and it's kind of like a free for all. So there can be a lot of illusion and distortion and things like that. So it's kind of like, does that make sense? It's just kind of this almost like distorted realm of what we have going on right now. And so it's kind of a free for all, like the fun house of the energetic realm in the middle world, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That actually does make sense. I can feel what you're saying, and I'm pretty sure that all our listeners will just feel your vibe as you explain it. And of course, some things we just cannot comprehend with the mind unless you experience it. It's so hard to say that what is going on, but I can feel that it's just an energy realm that is going on at the moment. So yeah, I can kind of relate to that. And so, what do you do to get into this altered state of consciousness when you're doing the shamanic healing? Do you use like a drum or a rattle or like a music or dancing, or can it be a combination of all of that, or do you use like marpacho or some
Yeah.
other medicines? What do you do?
All of it, all of it. So we often use a drum or a rattle because what that does is it puts us into a theta brainwave state, which is an altered state of consciousness, which helps us to access things outside of our conscious mind. So rhythm, repetitive rhythm is going to help change our brainwave state so we get there. So yeah, the drum, the rattle, dancing is fantastic, like ecstatic dancing, a combination of them. You can use binaural beats, you can meditate, you can use sound bowls, singing bowls, you can use plant medicines to get into those altered states. Everybody does it differently and everybody kind of finds the way that works well for them. And so I particularly am fond of using the drum when I'm doing a healing session with somebody, but plant medicines are another way that shamanic practitioners get into that state. Plant medicines are a really great way to do healing for yourself because it's really about that like inner experience. So when I do a session, I use my drum most often. Yeah. So wanting to change to theta brainwave, which is that we call it twilight. It's that space right when you're kind of dozing off to sleep. Right before you fall asleep, you're in that really kind of receptive realm. And then it's also the space right when you wake up before you're fully alert and before you fully get out of bed, you're in that really dreamy kind of space. So that's where we want to get to when we do shamanic work. Yeah.
Mm, that's a beautiful description of it, like just before going to sleep and just after waking up. That's actually,
Yeah.
I've never thought about it in this way. Thank you for sharing that. This is really amazing. And so it turns out that I'm a little shaman as well, because I've been working with medicines, like for example, mushrooms or even like weed in a shamanic way where you really connect to the plant, or cacao. So I'm a little shaman as well, without calling myself a shaman because I didn't do any trainings and so
Oh,
on. But
yeah.
I love guiding ceremonies and just really getting into these heightened states of consciousness and getting messages and receiving energy and just guiding people through it as well. So yeah, I can call myself a neo shaman, I guess, a little bit,
Yeah.
which is pretty funny.
I love
Um,
it.
and and so I'm super curious as well, because when you do your intuitive coaching, you are also doing a chakra assessment. And you know that I love talking about chakras. It's like one of my favorite topics ever. So I'm really curious to know, how do you assess it? Like what kind of maybe techniques you're using, and do you sense it? Do you see it? Do you how do you receive information,
Mm.
and how do you then work with it?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. So, the way that I do my chakra assessments is purely through my intuition. So, um, intuitive development is something that I've also spent a lot of time on. And so there are several different ways that we can pick up intuitive information. There are like four ways. So we have clear sentience, which is a clear feeling. We have clear cognizance, which is a clear knowing, clairaudience, which is clear hearing, and then clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. So I have a little bit of a combination of all of them, but my primary intuitive senses are clairsentience, which is that feeling, and then claircognizance, and then I do have clairvoyance kind of peppered in there as well. So when I connect with a person to read their chakra system, I am actually kind of getting into that theta brainwave state, that state of receptivity, and I'm tuning into my intuition. And then because energy is not bound by time or space, I'm able to read your energy like over the computer or over the phone if you're here with me. But what I'm doing is I'm setting the intention to pick up the information that you're holding in your energetic field, your aura, right? Within your chakra system. And so it will come to me in like physical sensation. I often feel emotion. I'll have images flash through my mind, symbols, almost kind of like scenes from a movie. And then I will have just thoughts, just like these knowings that pop in. And so I blend it all together. And my job as this intuitive coach or intuitive counselor is to kind of interpret all of this intuitive information that I'm getting. And then I present it to you and I say, can you understand this? Is this making sense? And a lot of it is information that might be kind of buried in the subconscious. It might be things they haven't really thought of in a while. And then the whole purpose of me bringing it up is to say, oh, I feel like this is potentially impacting your life in this way. And these are some strategies that we can implement so you can move forward. And so a lot of it, because like we were talking about before, like you said, emotion is energy in motion. It's often emotions that we're not allowing ourselves to feel that's influencing the flow of energy, but it's also psychological information. What kind of thought patterns do you have? Do you have any limiting beliefs? What kind of behaviors are you perpetuating in your life now, or did you in the past that could have potentially brought you to this point now? So there's just so much information that comes up, but it all comes through my intuitive senses. So it does have this feel of like kind of a magical experience because I am just reading your energy that way. And so, um, yeah, but this conversation piece is so important because then we process it and we not only identify it, but then we talk about like, okay, so this is why we need to move through this, and this is how we can do it.
Amazing. That's really, really cool how you work with your intuition and you probably get some images and some sensations. And probably for every individual, it's also different because obviously intuition works so amazingly that we never know what's going to happen, never know what's going to come up. But it's beautiful. So it's nice to combine, I guess, this kind of work with also shamanic healing all together because then you have some pieces of information and like what is going on in your energy field. And then you can know maybe if you should go into the underworld or the upper world when you go into the healing, because I guess there are different things that you need to look at to know in which world, which layer of a human you're working with, right? Or do you always address all of them?
It's whichever. I always set the intention. It's whatever the person that I'm working with needs to know right now, today, for their highest good. And so I don't always work with each layer, but what we find is that they're all intertwined. So if we identify an issue in one layer, we're going to understand how it's impacting the other layer. And then when we kind of create that change in that one layer, it's going to ripple through the rest of them. So inadvertently, yeah, we really do always kind of work with all of the layers of a person. Um, but every session is different. Every person is different. So each one is unique.
Perfect. And I also think that, yeah, working on one layer, it's not always enough because even though, like, I've had, let's say, some clients that came to me for shadow work, which is subconscious work, right? For soul retrieval and all these underworld stuff, let's say. And they were like, okay, I was working with the angels and with the intentions and with these higher realms, but I still feel like I have shit in my subconscious mind that needs to be released. So it's like if you only look at one layer, it doesn't necessarily have to encompass all that you need to work through, right? Because like it's beautiful to connect with the angels and with the guides and to know where you're going and to have some guidance and so on. But it's also beautiful to come back to your childhood trauma and to see, okay, this is where I didn't give love to myself. This is where I dissociated. This is where I didn't accept what's going on, and now I'm re-owning it. Now I'm actually re-embodying it and I'm associating to the experience. And so I think it's just the wholeness of the healing that brings the better results, because then you really can look at all of these things and treat it holistically. And this is what I think that is the most important thing, to not close ourselves in one box and to look only through this lens, because obviously it's so nice to always receive just guidance from the angels and feel so loved and so light. But is this enough on the journey for you to always move forward and be more and more healed? Well, I don't know, and maybe for some time, but then probably the universe will slap you in the face and give you a trigger, and you're not going to have any choice but to look in the eye of this trigger and to just go there. So I think it's just like working always in magical ways to give us exactly what we need in the moment, right? Because the universe is so beautiful, just giving us what we need and not necessarily what we always want. I
Oh,
found.
yes, and that's the biggest thing, and I think, one thing that is so important and really kind of like the main component of the work that I do is helping people heal on this physical level as well so that they can connect, because a lot of people feel like they can't connect to their angels and their guides, and they're, even feeling connected to their soul because of so much trauma, and so it is inner child healing, shadow work, bringing all those pieces together so a person can feel reconnected and then feel like they're connected again once to like their soul fam, right? Like not only people here in the physical world, but also all of their spirit helpers in the upper world because it can feel really disconnecting to experience trauma. So yeah, it is that hard work. It's about looking at our triggers and all of that and our patterns and our beliefs and all of that so we can become or achieve a sense of wholeness again.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But you know what? I found that like this hard work actually becomes quite fun. And when you do it like quite often, it's like, oh, I'm triggered. What's gonna be there this time?
I
And
know.
oh, what's gonna this trauma bring? It's like, yeah, it is hard work because sometimes you need to just feel uncomfortable, right? And go into the depths of your shit, of your things that you don't really want to feel. That's why you
Yeah.
suppressed it on the first place. But once you actually get out of there, it's like, oh, that's exciting. My life is gonna be even better. And so it actually becomes more like a game. And I remember when I was doing the training with
Yeah.
Tilswan, with my mentor, about this method, she was like, yeah, just don't look at it as you need to fix yourself and there is still so much shit to work through. Look at it as fun because there is another part of you. And I'm just like, are you freaking serious? Like, I can't look at it as fun.
Yeah.
And now, fast forward a few years, I'm like, yay, let's get triggered. Like, if I don't get triggered for a week or so,
Right.
I'm just looking forward to be triggered again and seeing what's there and so on. And I always like thank people that trigger me, actually, for triggering
Yeah.
me, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't go into the depths of my subconscious mind. And so it's actually really beautiful when we get triggered. So I personally really like it.
Yeah. Yes, well, right. And so I often look at the whole purpose of us being here is to get to know ourselves, right? The whole point is to feel whole and to feel integrated. And so the journey is finding all of those ways that we've kind of become disconnected. And so, yes, I feel you 100%. When I see a trigger, I'm like, oh, sweet. This is an opportunity to even connect more deeply with myself. I want to look at this. What is this all about? How did this start? I feel you, yes. And it should
That's
it
so
should
so
be fun.
nice.
Yeah. Yes, I hear you.
Because life is fun, really. If we make it fun, everything can be fun, you know? We just need to shift the
Yeah.
perspective and for our nervous system to just get a little bit used to going deep into our feelings. And then it can actually be fun. So, to all of you who still don't think that shadow work is fun, don't worry, you'll get there. The more you do it, the
You'll get
easier
there.
it will become, and you'll get there. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So, I have last quick question to you. What is the best way to find you if people really resonate with you and they would like to see more of your content and you and maybe come for a
Yeah.
session? What's the best way?
Yes. So I am located in Wisconsin. I have an office in Stockbridge, Wisconsin. If you happen to be in the area, you are more than welcome to come visit me here. But I do a lot of work online as well. So you can find me on Instagram at Insights with Rachel. Just that. There's no special characters, no numbers. Insights with Rachel. And then you can also find me, or you can email me at www.intuitive.rachel.insights@gmail.com. And I also have a website that is Illuminate Intuitive Insights LLC.com. So all these different
Beautiful.
ways.
Intuitive insights. I love that. I absolutely love that. That's amazing. Thank you so, so much for sharing
Yeah.
yourself with us and our
Oh,
soul fam and all the listeners. It was an exciting conversation. I love talking about shamanism and chakras. So, oh, thank you so, so much.
I
Really.
love it. Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much for going into this deep shamanic journey with us. And I am the Connection Catalyst on Instagram if you'd like to find me and follow me there. And SoulFam Podcast also has Instagram. It's We Are SoulFam. And we're in the process of creating SoulFam app, which is going to be a social networking app for spiritual and conscious people all over the world. So stay tuned to know when it is live and also stay tuned to the next episode.